This is a second generation wireless Go, similar to the original but with multiple upgrades internally and externally. The most obvious being the inclusion of a second transmitter. Rode claims the range is better than the original wireless Go. In this review I'll be testing the range and new features, plus showing you what I've learned since buying it. And the review starts right now. Welcome to another product review on Dave Tech, all about audiovisual and video production. I purchased this from B&H. This is not sponsored, and Rode isn't saying this before I post it publicly. If you're familiar with the first generation kit, you may want to jump ahead to the next chapter. But if you're not, this is Rode's affordable 2.4 gigahertz wireless microphone system. This is powerful yet user-friendly for consumers and prosumers. The audio quality is nice, and the range is fantastic. It was one of, or probably the first to include a built-in microphone in the transmitter. This does mean the transmitter is likely in the shot, but it's faster than routing a wired mic. This system does allow the user to use a built-in microphone on the transmitter or an external 3.5mm TRS microphone. I bought the original wireless Go in 2019. You can see my review here. A lot has changed with this new system and on this channel. The first gen has worked well for me, but it was limited in order to be a simple wireless system at a low cost. The second gen system moves closer to the Rode Link in, well, many ways. The wireless Go 2 uses the new Series 4 digital transmission with 128-bit encryption. The original Go used the Series 3. Rode claims it can go 200 meters or 100 social distancing markers with line of sight. So of course I had to go out and do a completely crazy extreme test as I did with the original, only I walked further this time, of course. Let's look at the transmitters. Both are identical in most ways to the original. Externally, the differences include a new logo, branding on the side, and the windscreen has been updated with a new connector that twists to lock. I find that despite the small size and lightweight, the transmitter still doesn't stay well on some clothes such as a t-shirt. According to Rode's website specs, the transmitter is technically lighter by 1 gram. The power button looks the same, but it now can act as a mute button on the transmitter. What you can't see here is what changed inside. Both transmitters now include internal recording, which can be recorded in compressed or uncompressed formats. The transmitter each can record up to 40 hours of compressed audio. This is higher than the system was able to record at launch. If choosing uncompressed, it is limited to 7 hours, but most likely more than you'll need before recharging, and of course, most likely as a backup. It is important to realize that once the internal memory is full, it will start overwriting the older data. The uncompressed format is WAV, which is standard. The compressed is MP3, really, in 2021. Okay. You'll have to download the RodeCentral app to copy files to your computer. As of this review, there is no app for phones or tablets. I believe Rode is working on this. Recording is automatic once the transmitter is on and connected to a receiver, so you can't forget to start it. It keeps recording until it's turned off. However, an important detail I missed before recording the first time with the system is that the recording feature is not on by default. I'll show this when we look at the software. Rode has stated the system will go up to 7 hours on a charge. I recently tested this and found that all 3 units actually ran a little more than 7 hours, with white noise being fed into both transmitters through a splitter to ensure that both were receiving the same level. Let's listen to the difference between compressed and uncompressed. Of course, this video is also compressed. I'm going to play this audio multiple times. This is both transmitters side by side, about the same distance from when I recorded the studio portion in the same room. I'm recording simultaneously, compressed in one, uncompressed in the other, and I will show on the screen which segment you're listening to. I'm going to play this audio multiple times. This is both transmitters side by side, about the same distance from when I recorded the studio portion in the same room. I'm recording simultaneously, compressed in one, uncompressed in the other, and I will show on the screen which segment you're listening to. I'm going to play this audio multiple times. This is both transmitters side by side. I'm going to play this audio multiple times. This is both transmitters side by side. I'm going to play this audio multiple times. This is both transmitters side by side. I'm going to play this audio multiple times. This is both transmitters side by side. I'm going to play this audio multiple times. This is both transmitters side by side. I'm going to play this audio multiple times. This is both transmitters side by side. The receiver hasn't changed a lot externally either, but has changed even more significantly internally. Rode has changed the USB and analog ports from the right to the left and added the name of the unit on the side. Of course, it now has the ability to receive audio from two transmitters. It can also output audio separated or stereo or combined mono. The screen is about the same as the original, but obviously it now shows the status of up to two transmitters and if the transmitter is recording. The DB and link buttons do pretty much the same as the original. Pressing both at the same time, if held for 3 seconds, will switch between combined or split modes. You can also mute the transmitters from the receiver. Push once for the first receiver, a second time for the second, and a third to exit the selection. Now, this only works when there are two transmitters actively connected. Otherwise, you wouldn't have two to choose from. When the desired transmitter is selected, a quick push of the gain button will mute. Just as the original, the screen will dim to save battery power, but pressing the power button quickly will return display to full brightness. This can be changed in the RodeCentral app. Well, speaking of which, let's look at that app. This is a software running on a Mac. On the left is a list of transmitters or receivers connected. It is possible to show all three if you have 3 ports available. Each unit shows the firmware. As of this recording, it is 123. That's easy. And a battery icon. You can also double-click on the name if you want to rename it, which is pretty cool. Clicking on one of these units will show more details and settings. On the right, of course, you'll see that at the top, the name, either default or custom, plus if it's a receiver or a transmitter. Under this is the control to turn the record function on. Again, I assume this is on by default, but it is not. Next to it is a mute lock. It's great that the Wireless 2 has the ability to mute, but I can see myself bumping the button and accidentally muting myself. Obviously, I'm not alone here, as there is a setting for this. Under that is a detailed battery status with the percentage. Under this is the option to record compressed or uncompressed. Personally, I wouldn't recommend compressed, especially for online video, as it's going to be compressed several times again before it is played by your viewer. Down here, you'll see how much space is remaining for recording and also the ability to erase or format the internal memory. Under this is a setting to sync the internal clock. This allows you to sync the date and time. Now important because of the use of internal recording. We'll see this again with the playback of recorded files. Under this is the current firmware and if it's up to date. Now, if it's not up to date when you connect it, you will be prompted to update when you use the software. Looking at the left again, if you have multiple units connected, you can use the arrow at the bottom of the left to go back to the selection screen. Choosing the receiver this time, let's look at the options. Some are only available because of software, as it's cheaper to implement things in software than hardware. Of course, once again, you can rename the receiver. Looking at the right, there are a lot of great options. The first is to turn off the backlight. Given the battery life of the system, I don't recommend turning off the backlight strictly for battery life. The next setting is very nice. Instead of only 3 gain settings, as was the case with the original system, you can now set this to fine. I'm not sure why you wouldn't want to use this. Next to that is the gain. When set to fine, has a range between 0 and -30. Next, you can choose split or combined. Basically, this is stereo or mono. Split gives you more control as each transmitter is recorded as a different channel. However, when set to combined, you can enable the safety track as seen in other systems such as the Video Mic NTG, which is up here, as it always is when I'm recording in the studio. Though I was only able to get this to work through the analog out. The final setting on top is for the power button. Of course, holding it in for 3 seconds still powers the unit on and off, but quickly pressing the button can affect either the backlight, as it did with the original, but you can instead set a flag or a marker in the audio file being recorded internally. Then, as with the transmitter, the battery level, firmware, device clock, plus the UID. Looking at the left again, this is where audio recordings are listed. Unfortunately, you cannot change the name here, but you can see if they're compressed, uncompressed, and the length. You can play them back and jump to the markers. Notice how it shows you how far you are in on the recording, but it also shows you the day and time according to the internal clock and the transmitter. This is shown in a 24-hour clock format on the timeline, but if you have it set to 12-hour time, it shows AM or PM below. Markers will also be added if the transmitter lost its signal, or of course if you add it manually. Now to play it back, if you scroll or scrub through the audio, unfortunately that does not play. To play back the audio, you have to use the play button on the bottom. So either using the flags or manually. If you want to export just part of the file, just scroll to each side and grab these handles till you highlighted, of course, the area that you want to export, either using the flags or just through playback. Once you selected the part of the file you want to export, just click, of course, on Export Selection. Now, if you don't do this, of course, it'll just export the whole file. To export, click Export. Here you'll see some options. The option is again presented to export it uncompressed or compressed. But if you set as compressed, the MP3 can only have a maximum of 320 kilobits per second. The file can be saved in 48 or 44.1 kilohertz. If uncompressed, it can be saved as a 24-bit PPM or 32-bit float, though my understanding is it's not true 32-bit float. On the Mac, the transmitter shows up as a drive, which does not have to be ejected before you unplug. This shows the files you recorded, but they are not in WAV or MP3 format. I was hoping I could just copy them directly in the Finder. If the receiver is set up to split or merged mode, it will record individual monofiles on the transmitter, even if both transmitters are used. I can't seem to find a way to delete a specific file in the software though. The Gen 2 comes with different USB cables, which are flat. These do not include the Velcro style wraps of the first generation. Unlike some devices, it can be used with a USB-C to USB-C cable, including charging and syncing. Thanks, Rode. I mentioned that the system addresses a lot of issues with the first generations that I had anyway. I was thinking about buying the Boom X, Boom XD, I believe it is, from Comica because of the dual transmitter system. I mean, come on, Comica? The name alone sounds silly. I do like that that system does have a screen on the transmitters, which the Wireless 2 does not. But given that the transmitter can be visible, it might be distracting to the viewer. The 2 LEDs on the Rode transmitters are limited, but at least you can now check the charge status and other things on the app. I still wish the screen on the transmitter could be on the side of the receiver like the Rode Link kit, as it is hard to see the receiver's screen when it is on top of the camera on a tripod. If there was a way to buy the transmitters and receiver separately with an upgraded receiver or an alternate kit, I'd buy that. I know Rode is trying to keep the price down and keep the system smaller. I'm not sure if it's possible with a system like this, but I'd appreciate either built-in or as an accessory a microphone that is far less prone to ambient noise. I have an extremely inexpensive handheld wireless mic system. Even though it doesn't sound good without EQ, it does eliminate most background noise, even in a convention hall. I'd love to get this in a wireless mic. I do have a wired lav mic from a different manufacturer that is similar, but it requires XLR and phantom power. Here is an example of the original Wireless Go system at a trade show, something that used to happen often, versus that inexpensive wireless mic system.
It'll keep ice for 2 days, everything cool or hot.
It's great. Now this being insulated, that's something I have not seen before. I would have bought this system if the only change was a second transmitter, but Rode added so much more while keeping the price the same relatively. I really appreciate the fine gain control, muting options, and increased range, and even the new windscreens. I've never had any issue with the range of the original, and never had the windscreens disconnect when I didn't want them to, but it's still nice. I also love the internal recording for the transmitters. When I first heard about the next-gen system, I thought the transmitters could act as a standalone recorder, but thinking this was true, I tried to use the system to record audio to sync later for my 360 camera. I'm not sure why this transmitter can't work as a standalone recorder. I would also like the ability to delete individual files. If it's possible, I wasn't able to figure that out. I would love to see a larger screen than the receiver, but it does fit a lot of information and easy to understand graphics, and it does let you see if the transmitter is on and recording, which is also great. This is absolutely going to help make my future videos better. Even if the price was higher, I'd absolutely recommend this. Hope this video helped you. Thanks for watching this video, and remember, you can't spell Dave without AV.